I want to I just want to share that this presentation is interactive, so I will be asking some questions, and so I hope that you all are willing to participate. In fact, it makes it a lot more enjoyable and fun if you all can participate. And just like Karen said, if you feel comfortable, definitely I love to see your faces. If you want to share your screen, or not share your screen, but turn on your video, that also makes it enjoyable as well, and a lot of fun. So with that, again, my name is Chris Calzada, and I work in admissions. I'm an admissions counselor for Western University of Health Sciences. We are located in Pomona, California, which is in the Los Angeles County area. And today I'm going to do what we call a case study presentation. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment here. But while I can see everybody before I share my screen, one question I want to ask before we get started is, who here is interested? First, I'll ask who here is interested in the DO profession. You know that's what you want to do. That's for sure thing. You could do a virtual hand too, if you don't have your camera on. But virtual hand or just show of hands. Anybody here that they know the DO profession is what you want to? Okay, cool. What about just you want to be a physician? You're still deciding DO, MD. Any show of hands for that? Okay. All right. And okay. All right. Good. And then now, are you unsure? Anybody? And that's okay too, because man, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, and that's totally fine. I mean, we're still on that stage, right? So. Is everybody in this group, are we still in undergrad or in working on, right? Okay, just want to make sure who I'm talking to. Okay, cool. So this helps me to kind of get to know you a little bit better, where you're at in your journey, and also so that we can kind of talk about some of those things and your path into the health professions field, right? So so I do see some chats. So sometimes when I try to monitor, leaning more towards DO. Okay, so I see that. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to share my screen and we'll go ahead and get started here. Let me open this up. We'll bring this over here. And then see if this works here. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Yes, okay. And let me switch that. Hold on one second here. I forgot it's kind of backwards on this, so let's try this again. Okay, do you guys see the presenter mode, or is it? Okay. Do you also see? I'm sorry?
I see the presenter mode.
Okay, so it's not, you don't see the other slides or anything like that yet on those? Okay, just the presenter. Okay, all right. Okay, cool. I'm using a different computer today, so so just a little bit again. Today, actually, and probably in the invitation, you might have seen that Alberto is going to be here. He's my colleague. He also works in the Office of Admissions. We kind of had a last-minute emergency. He got pulled away to another recruitment fair to fill in for another counselor that wasn't able to be there. But here's our contact information. Both of us can help you if you have questions. Please feel free to write our email addresses down. You can also give us a call, email, set up an advising appointment, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I'll also provide my email again in just a moment, or later at the end if you still need it. But just briefly, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just briefly about Western U. We were established in 1977. We first started with the College of Osteopathic Medicine of the Pacific. We call it COMP for short. That's the college for our DO program, or our Doctor of Osteopathic medicine program. But we've now grown to 9 different colleges, and we have 26 different programs in the different health professions. So we are a graduate health professions institution. So we don't have any undergrad, bachelor's, associate degree programs. We're all master's, doctorate, and certificate programs. And so here's just a brief list of some of the doctorate degree programs. Of course, we have a DO program, and we have a campus here that I mentioned earlier in Pomona, California, but also in Oregon. And our DO program is offered in both of those campuses. And then the rest of majority of the other programs are at our California campus. So like our pharmacy, veterinary, dental, optometry, pediatric medicine, and then we have some master's degree programs as well. All right, I'm going to come back to this slide. I'm actually going to show it in just a moment. But let's go ahead and get into the case study. So this is a really fun exercise, and I think it's really important because it helps you to prepare to apply to a competitive program, right? I think I don't need to tell you that. I mean, you probably already know medical school is very competitive to apply to, and so it's my job to tell you and prepare you in the best way that I can to make sure that you are competitive so that you can get in and ultimately be accepted and meet and obtain that goal of becoming a physician, or whatever your goal is, right? And so what we're going to do, we're going to kind of role play here. And so I want you all to imagine that you are all part of the admissions committee. So you are sitting in the chair of the admissions committee for the DO program, and you're going to receive 3 DO applications, and you're going to review them. And this is what happens in real life. This is our admissions committee are comprised of faculty members, and they get these applications, and then they're going to decide whether they want to invite them for an interview or not. And so that's what you're going to do. We're not going to discuss the interview. We can talk about that if we have time at the end. I could do a whole nother presentation on the interview process. But I want to teach you some tools and things like that, and how you can how to get an interview, right? Because I think that's really important. So what you're going to decide today is, are you going to invite this applicant for an interview? And you're going to do that based on the following, that list there. So I'm going to provide to you 3 different applications. And these, by the way, are real life applications. We don't have a name on there, but these are applications and real scenarios. So we're going to talk about that. And you're only seeing a part of the application. So I'll show you their GPA, MCAT scores, and just kind of the hours and things like that they did for extracurricular activities and healthcare related experience. And then just a brief paragraph of their personal statement, not the whole statement. And so you're going to make a decision based off of that. Obviously, in real life, you'd see the whole file, but this is just going to be a part of it. So with that, before we do that, I want to show you the statistics for the students who were accepted into the program last application cycle for the DO program. So if you want to take a screenshot of this, write them down, mainly the GPAs and MCAT, the numbers that you want to keep in mind as you make your decisions, because this is a part of that process, right? We're going to look at other things, but these are the averages. So again, averages means averages. You all know that. That doesn't mean that it's a minimum. That means that some students were accepted in the program that were lower than those GPAs that you see there. Some were higher than those GPAs. Same thing with MCAT, okay? So keep that in mind. Again, just kind of make a note of the science GPA and overall GPA, and then MCAT score, okay? All right, and we'll talk about these too, so don't worry. Okay, so before we do that, let me now, give me a second here. Okay, can everybody see? Oh, maybe is my screen sharing paused?
I still see the PowerPoint.
Okay, then let's do this. Okay, now can you see applicant A? All right, okay, thank you. Okay, so this is applicant A, all right? So science GPA is 3.82, overall GPA 3.63, MCAT is 501, all right? This person's extracurricular activities, they completed 876 hours. And then they completed 514 hours of healthcare experience. So some type of experience they did in healthcare. So next I want to ask for a volunteer so that you don't just hear me talking the whole time. I could talk forever, but I want to, like I said, I want this to be interactive so so we can hear somebody else talk. So if I can get a volunteer to read the personal statement, just go ahead and unmute yourself or take it away.
It is a widely recognized fact that the environment in which you grow up plays a huge part in shaping the kind of person you eventually become. For me, this meant that being born and raised in a third world country opened my eyes to the harsh realities of life from a very early age. I was fortunate in that I was raised in a province that was fairly stable economically. My family was able to send me to a good school and provide me with food, shelter, and other daily essentials. However, I was always aware that such basic necessities were not as easily available to most people in the Philippines. The news constantly reported on informal settlers living under bridges, beside canals, and hundreds of other people who suffered under poverty. There would be there will be sick people who could not be accommodated by their local hospitals. Perhaps as a result of all of this, they firmly taught me at home and in school about how important it is to be grateful for everything I have been given.
All right. Thank you. Nisha, did I pronounce that right? Nisha?
Yes, correct.
All right. Thank you, Nisha. I appreciate that. So that was, again, just the opening paragraph of their personal statement. And as we look down here, this applicant has 6 letters of recommendation. 1 is from a physician, 2 are from a committee, and then 3 are from professors. So just take a moment. Again, I'll scroll back up to their stats. You can review their hours. They got 6 letters. So take a moment and make a decision on whether you want to invite this applicant for an interview. And Karen, if you can do me a favor and put up that poll, and you're going to select yes if you decide to invite this person for an interview or no. So you'll have 2 options. So Karen, if you want to share that, and then let's see here. Okay. Now, okay, you guys can see the PowerPoint again? Okay, so let's talk about it. So I see that we have majority said yes. Are you able, can you share the results, Karen? Okay, so here are the results. So majority said yes. Looks like we got 78%, and then there were a few no's. So now I would like to ask a volunteer who said yes, if you can unmute yourself and explain your reasoning why. And there's no, by the way, there's no wrong or right answers here, just to kind of talk about your thought process. And I see Nita, if you wanna, you raising your hand there?
Yes. So at first obviously I was very impressed by the stats, especially the GPA. The MCAT, although it was on the lower end, I guess as students we know how standardized testing is different from taking classroom exams, and I was taking that into account, and it's still above a 500, so it's not bad, and the MCAT is hard. I'm currently in that position, so maybe I relate to this student, but I also know how incredibly difficult it is to have a 3.8 in science GPA.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I think, and then the number of hours were pretty high. They put in a lot of time with their extracurriculars. I did find the personal statement, the first paragraph at least, a little bit underwhelming. And for that's well, that took me a second to like go before you get between yes or no.
Mhm.
But again, the GPA, the MCAT score, and uh, the only reason I say underwhelming is because I wish the student talked more about. Uh, I did appreciate how they mentioned they grew up in a third world country. That is
Mhm.
like an out of the world type of experience. I certainly didn't have to live through that.
Mhm.
And so that made their story even more remarkable to
Mhm.
like coming into medical school. But I did feel I wish they talked a little bit more about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was like the only thing. A little bit more about how did this experience uh, related back to them.
Mhm.
But I think overall, I would give them an interview. Why not? Like they worked hard. Like we're all working hard, all of us on this call.
Mhm.
And we know that we would love to have somebody give us an opportunity to at least interview,
Yeah.
get to know
Yeah.
more.
Absolutely. Yeah, and those are all really good points. I definitely agree with you. Their GPA was very good, and yeah, MCAT definitely. I can go on a whole soapbox about standardized testing, but I'll save that for another time. But thank you for sharing. Very good points. Um, can I get a volunteer that said no and also do the same thing? Maybe kind of walk me through their thought process. Carlos, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yep, yep. Uh-huh.
Sweet. So, yeah, I won't reiterate a lot of what the previous person said. I lost her name, but yeah, the stats were perfectly fine. MCAT, I mean, yeah, it's really hard, challenging standardized tests. So stats weren't a problem. Neither were extracurriculars. For me though, I was leaning between a yes or a no because of the personal statement. And I think because she didn't really it was explaining too much of outside factors and not really her own personal experience. I think just the way she wrote her personal statement, at least for that first paragraph,
Mhm.
I think she could have brought it more towards her instead of focusing on, um, I guess, like all the external factors, which again doesn't undermine how important or how real her experience was. I just think it could have been written a
Mhm.
slightly better way to bring it
Mhm.
back towards her.
Mhm.
So for me, it was just a personal statement, but otherwise everything else was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, very good points, Carlos. I'm glad that you mentioned that. I mean, I think that, and another thing too, we can do a whole presentation on personal statements, and we can talk about effective writing and how to, make a good personal statement, and what are some good things to include, what not to include, you know. So that can definitely be a whole nother discussion as well. And keep in mind, this is obviously just one portion of their personal statement. So, in all fairness, you guys are only able to see it, just that one paragraph, but clearly there's a lot more to it than that. But I think you all are making some really good points. You probably already saw, because I wasn't in presenter mode. You might have already seen the next slide, what the results were. I don't know if anybody saw that, but so this is what happened with applicant A. And again, this is based on a real example. You guys can see the results slide, correct? Yes. Okay. So what happened with this student was they were originally denied with that application that you saw. And what happened was with this student is they reapplied, and they were accepted the second time after reapplying. And what they did was, and both students mentioned this, their weakness was 501, or for MCAT could have been improved. Both of you talked a little bit about that. And so they retook the MCAT, got a higher score. They also did some more shadowing experience, which this wasn't on here. but that also helped to improve their application. And then they rewrote, kind of polished their personal statement a little bit more. And then they were accepted into the program when they reapplied. And this is something that we can talk a little bit more about. I want to make sure we have enough time to go into the other applications, but it's very, very common for applicants to be denied and reapply. And so sometimes I get the question is it okay if I reapply? Does that look bad? It's absolutely okay to reapply. It's very common. The admissions committee sees it, often. And the thing I can't stress enough is, what do you do when you reapply? And that is work on the weaknesses. Find out what your weaknesses are in your application and focus on those. The admissions committee doesn't want to see the exact same application. So they want to see what have you done since the last application cycle to improve your application. So in this case, like I said, the MCAT 501, we saw that the average is 508, right? So they closed that gap. They got closer to that 508. And then sometimes students need to consider, if it's a GPA issue, maybe retaking courses. As you're applying to different schools, you will learn that some schools will replace old grades with new grades. If you repeat a course, some schools will do an average. That's what we do. So if you retake a course, you got a C and you got an A, we'll average it out to a B. So that will help when we do our recalculation in your GPAs. So sometimes that may be something that you may want to focus on. Sometimes your volunteer work, right? Maybe you don't have a whole lot of hours. You need to work on boosting that up before you reapply again. So the main takeaway here is find out what your weaknesses are, sit down with an admissions counselor, talk to them and say, what do you think that I should focus on? Because a lot of times students will focus on areas that they want to focus on and not what needs to be focused on. So for example, I'll have students come to me a lot that will have like a 501 MCAT. And again, it's not bad, right? You're still above 500. And they'll focus on doing some more, they'll get a job. They'll get as a medical scribe, and they'll say, I want to increase my hours, to make my application stronger. And what I would tell them is, well, you got a lot of hours, actually. You're really good there. I would focus on studying for the MCAT. So, and that's usually not what they want to hear, right? You don't want to have to retake the MCAT. You don't want to have to retake courses, but because it's so competitive, just think about those things, right? And so, and I'm going to talk about that the MCAT GPA are just stats. They're not the only thing. They do look at the application on a holistic view. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But let's move on to the next thing here, or applicant here. Okay, can everybody see applicant B okay? All right, thank you for that feedback. Okay. All right, so applicant B, science GPA 3.41, overall GPA 3.25, MCAT 496. Their extracurricular activities, 232 hours, healthcare related experiences, 15,140. So clearly they had a job, right? So they were definitely working. And letters of recommendation, they got 7. So they had 2 physician, 1 from a dentist, 1 from a research faculty, and then they had 3 from science professors. So if I can get a volunteer for someone to read this personal statement.
I can read it.
Thank you.
When asked why I feel so excited about writing a personal statement about my motivations to seek a career in medicine, the answer was so clear to me. I always wanted to become a doctor and always will. But my story as a second career student is a winding one that has given me the opportunity to see many facets of the healthcare industry that has reinforced time and time again my lifelong dream to become a physician. I was excited because it felt like this was my chance to show medical schools that I bring a unique experience that shows my commitment to the healthcare field and my motivation to ultimately become a physician.
Awesome. Thank you, Bianca. Appreciate that. Okay, so just as a reminder, so we have 7 letters here. So that's great. They have 2 physicians, 3 science professors. That's also really good. Research. So it looks like they did research, right? So that's also really good. A lot of healthcare experience. Clearly, their stats are a little bit lower than the other one. MCAT definitely significantly lower. So let's do a poll and see what you all would recommend. Would you invite this person for an interview? Yes or no? Okay, so are those published so that they can see them? All right. So it looks like majority of you said no. There were a couple of yeses. So let's hear from someone that selected yes. Let's walk through that process if anybody wants to volunteer.
If you can hear me, I can share a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, please do. Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, it was kind of tough. Like initially I was leaning towards no too, but I guess in the end I kind of had to like, do I emphasize the healthcare experiences that they have, or like their stats? I don't know. And for me, I think having the healthcare experience, in the personal statement, they kind of start talking about it a little bit more. And like you said, from their work, you can tell that they've really worked in the healthcare industry. And that kind of like let me know that this person knows what they're talking about, what they're applying for. Definitely, I think they might need some help with like the MCAT, if there's any like preparatory courses or anything like that, if the school even offers. But, I felt like maybe a chance to kind of see like what their thoughts are, what exactly their experiences were, just knowing that they've already been involved in the health industry for that long.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, very good point. Working, having those experiences definitely strengthen your application, but also, confirm to you that this is what you want to do. And a lot of those experiences are important when drawing on those experiences and some examples that you can use when you do write your personal statement or when you are interviewed, talk about some of those experiences. So absolutely, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. What about someone that decided not to invite this applicant for an interview? I see a hand up. Drewer? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, it's Drew here. That's okay. I go by Drew.
Okay, Drew. Yeah, thank you for volunteering. Let's hear what your thought process was.
So yeah, this was essentially my application the first time I applied to med school. And definitely the MCAT was a weak point for this person and for me as well. And I think the big thing that really unsold me on this application was their personal statement. Basically, even though it talked about them, it didn't say anything either unique or interesting. It just said, hey, I want to be a doctor and I really have a passion for it. And it didn't say why or how.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that it's the first paragraph, so that might not be fair, but it's not an interesting first paragraph. So I was not inclined to continue reading it if I were an admissions person. Their
Okay.
healthcare experience is great. I agree with that, but it's not enough for me to save the rest of the application.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, very good points. I like that. Thank you for sharing, Drew. And I see another hand too. So Gamar, do you want to share your thoughts as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So kind of piggybacking off of what the last person just said, I see the first thing that I was really impressed about was the fact that they did have a lot of hours for healthcare experience, and there was a lot of really good letters of recommendation. However, the reason why I said no was because, I mean, again, it could be just because this is the first paragraph, but I think in the personal statement, that would be the exact place where you would showcase how those experiences, you know, and especially with how many hours they have, how that kind of encompassed their reasoning for, you know, furthering why they want to, you know, apply and, you know, be in the medical field specifically for a physician. So I feel like, excuse me, I feel like if they could just have improved that factor in their personal statement, so that they can showcase what they kind of got out of all of those experiences. Because I can only imagine there's so much that they probably learned and gained from those experiences. So I feel like the personal statement definitely could have been a factor of improvement.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, just the MCAT as well. You could see, you know, there might be, if they apply a second time around, they could showcase how they could have improved their score as well.
Yeah, yeah, really good points. I appreciate you sharing that, Gamar. I mean, really, I can tell you that the admissions committee, among a lot of things that they want to know about you, I can always tell you that no matter where you apply, they're always going to want to know, why do you want to be a D, and in our case specifically a DO physician, right? Why not go MD? Why do you want to be a DO physician? What about the osteopathic medicine profession? Why do you want to do that? And then why specifically our school, right? Our program. So yeah, definitely those health related experiences give you the opportunity to answer that first question of, you know, why do you want to be a DO? Why do you want to go into this profession? Yeah, definitely. Bianca, I see your hand up. You want to also share your thoughts?
I forgot I had my hand up.
Okay. That's okay. I mean, if
I
you don't
think
have to, but or if you want to, that's fine too.
I think I was just going to basically agree with Drew and Gamar that had just talked. This application feels a lot like, I've reviewed applications for programs for pre-meds, either high school or college, where they're thinking about medicine and they want to go explore it. And this application felt a lot like that, the personal statement specifically, where they're like, I'm really passionate about this, but they don't have anything concrete. And so I think I said yes because it reminded me of reading those applications, but I feel like for medical school, it would be a little different, right? At that point, you should know with more like concrete facts that you want this. So
Yeah, absolutely. Really good point. And I think you hit you hit around the nail, because I mean, at this point in your academic, you know, journey, yeah, you really need to know you're going to be spending the next, I mean, medical school is the next 4 years plus residency. It's a lot of money, time, commitment. You know, it's, yeah, you want to make sure that this is what you want to do. And that's not only in the interest of, you know, the school, they want to make sure they have a successful student, but also for yourself to make sure that this is what you want to do. Yeah, and so, yeah, really good point. Thanks, Bianca, for sharing. Okay, so I know we have I want to make sure that we get into our other we have one last one. So let me, oh, actually, before we do that, let me share what happened with this applicant. So so this applicant was denied. However, they were accepted to go into our Doctor of Pediatric Medicine program. Now, I mentioned before that we do offer a Doctor of Pediatric Medicine program, and in fact, I work with that program. And so just to kind of give you a comparison here, there's a dramatic difference in what you see as far as if we're just looking at stats. And you can see there that it's much less competitive and we get a lot less applications. And I want to talk a little bit about this pathway, this opportunity to go into pediatric medicine in just a moment. But I think there's a missed opportunity here that, you know, DO, MD is the most popular. It's kind of, I don't know if I want to use the word glorified, you know, kind of, you know, it's what you see on TV and all, you know, doctors, things like that. But pediatric medicine is a really good option to consider if you want to go into healthcare, if you want to be a physician, if you want to be a surgeon, if you want to have your own practice, if you want to work in a hospital. I mean, all those things that, you know, maybe you're already thinking that you want to do, but you never gave this option a second thought. And a lot of students who discover this pathway end up going into it and really enjoying it. So I'm just going to kind of plant that seed there real quick, but let's continue on to applicant C, and give me a second here and we'll talk about applicant C. All right, here we go. Applicant C. Okay, so this applicant has a science GPA of 3.17, overall 3.24, MCAT 498, extracurricular activities 750 hours, healthcare related experience 1,240 hours, so also really good, right? So if I can get a volunteer to read this personal statement.
Rampant indigence, malnutrition, and a crumbling medical system that was hardly operational. This climate of perpetual desperation, uncertainty, and fear was a mainstay of my upbringing in Nigeria. Unless I witnessed firsthand the legacy of a repressive Nigerian system, utterly devoid of access to the medical care, is impossible for some to fathom. Yet, as someone who lived through such malignant conditions, these experiences indelibly fashioned my outlook and career aspirations for a lifetime to come.
All right, thank you. And I forgot last time I gave this presentation to make sure that there were any spelling corrections or anything like that. I don't know if that was something that happened when this was created. Maybe the person didn't put the correct on these, or if maybe this was grammatical errors, things like that were in the application. But in any case, so letters of recommendation. So there's 4. There's a physician, a letter from a physician. There is a letter from a committee, which is also good. A supervisor, so probably their healthcare related experience sounds like they got a supervisor, and then also from a pharmacist, from a doctor of pharmacy. So let's go and put up the poll again, and this I'll scoot back up here so you can see the stats again in case you forgot those. So let's see what you all think. Okay, so if you want to share the results here. So we have some that said yes, some that say no. So let's talk about it. So someone that said yes, if you want to share your thoughts with us. And actually, you know what? I'm looking at the time. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and let's just talk about it, because actually I just saw what time it is. Let's just kind of walk this through together. So science GPA, overall GPA, and MCAT, I think, this person had, a little bit lower science GPA and overall GPA. MCAT clearly was lower. They had really good hours for extracurricular activities. Healthcare related experience was really good. Again, we can talk about personal statement. Just for the sake of time, let's just go ahead and talk about what happened with this applicant. And okay, can everybody see my screen that I'm sharing for results? Okay, cool. So they were originally denied. However, they were accepted into our Master of Science in Medical Science program, our MS program. And after they completed that program, then they were accepted into the DO program. So to our DO program. So here's also a comparison for the stats for if you want to go and apply straight to the DO program, or if you want to apply to MSMS and then go through that program and then go into our DO program. So again, just like podiatric medicine, you can see that there's definitely a difference in going that route as far as competitiveness. So MCAT is much lower on average, as well as GPAs, and a lot less applications. So the one thing I want to talk about the MSMS program is it's not guaranteed an interview to our DO program. What I always say is that majority of students who are successful in the MSMS program do go on to get an interview for our DO program. So it's not guaranteed, but if you're successful in it, most likely you'll go on and get an interview. And so a lot of students that are in the MSMS program are applying to some type of professional graduate program in health professions. Some of the students, majority of them are trying to get into our DO program. Some of them are trying to get into our like dental program or pharmacy or something like that. But majority of them are trying to go into our DO program. And so, of course, that's just an option. Lots of schools offer special master's programs or post-bac programs. Definitely, I would encourage you to consider those if you are needing, to strengthen your application, especially if your GPA is low. You just want to have that, more competitiveness to your application. It's not required by any means. A lot of students get accepted into the program without a post-bac program or master's, but it's just something to consider. Again, the whole point of today is just talking about optional pathways that you may have not considered before. One advice I will say is for us, for the admissions committee, what they're looking for is a program that's a science program. So sometimes students that want to go into our DO program enroll into like a master's in public health. And it's not bad, but I would recommend that you go into more of a science program. An MPH is not a science program, so definitely something to consider. If Western U is your top choice, then I would consider, the MSMS program. Otherwise, like I said, a lot of other programs through other institutions, definitely something to consider. So we talked about, I see a hand up. Gamar, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's just a really quick question. So when we talked about the last applicant in terms of they got accepted into the master's program, like the SMP route, is that something that you guys will like refer to specific applicants if you see the potential, or is that something that they had to have already applied to simultaneously? Like, how does that work?
So great question. Thank you for asking. So not proactively, no. So if you apply to the DO program and the admissions committee decides, you know what, they're not quite there yet. They need a little bit to be a little more competitive or something else that we're looking for. They're not going to recommend that. So proactively, you would reach out to an admissions counselor and sit down with one of us and say, hey, do you think that this would be a good option for us? And we'll tell you in this situation, yes. Or, in another situation, we'd recommend that you do this instead, because not everybody would benefit from a program like this. So I would really encourage you to talk to an admissions counselor. And like I said, we do advising appointments, or just email and say, hey, here's my application. Here's my, info. What do you recommend? Do you recommend I do a program like this? And then we can let you know, but we won't proactively suggest that or tell that to you when you apply to the DO program.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, good question. Okay, so again, so that's one option. We talked about podiatric medicine and reapplying, making sure that you're focusing on those weaknesses of your application. I mentioned earlier that I want to kind of briefly talk a little bit about podiatric medicine, because I think a lot of times it gets it doesn't get the attention that it needs. And because let's be honest, nobody as a kid says, I want to work with feet, right? I mean, nobody is born and said that's what I want to do, so I think it's definitely one of those professions that once you learn more about it and understand the benefits and the potential, it's definitely a rewarding career. I should probably, I don't really like to talk about the pay, because I think especially in California, you're looking at, there's definitely, that's a national average. So California would be making more than that. But the point here in this slide is, it is a very important profession. A lot of patients and a lot of individuals need help with, from physicians that focus and specialize in the lower extremities. And there are lots of different specialties that you can go into. Surgery being one of the biggest things that whenever I have a student that says, I want to go into surgery, when you go DO route, surgery is very, very competitive. You're going to learn that if you are DO or MD, you need to be very competitive in medical school, and then you apply to that residency. And to get into a surgical residency, it's very competitive and very long. So you're probably looking at like another 5 years after that. DPM students are trained as surgeons in a medical school, and you're a surgeon. So when you graduate, you can go into surgery. The residency is only 3 years. So you're in and out, done, 3 years. Doesn't matter if you go to surgery or any other kind of area that you want to focus on. And that's, if you want to go to sports medicine, that's a popular one, orthopedics, geriatrics, diabetes is huge. And you can go into research. So the other thing too that I like to mention about our DPM program is that our students that are in the DPM program are trained as a full body physician. So even though they're specialized in the lower extremities, they take all the same classes as our DO students do. They're going to be in the same classrooms. Just the difference is they're not taking those OMM classes, or and then they take their own what's called PMP or podiatric medicine specific classes. And so again, it's a rewarding career. I think that it's definitely a high demand, which is also really important. You're definitely going to have always job opportunities. And one of the differences that I noticed when I talk to faculty that are in our DO program compared to our DPM program is the DPM faculty really talk about their work-life balance. There's definitely a really nice work-life balance when you go into this profession, and the flexibility that you have. Some of them, as I mentioned before, they're in surgery, and then sometimes they have their own practice. There's a lot of flexibility in kind of keeping that different, having those different options. So anyways, with that, I'll stop about that. I can, again, go into a whole presentation on podiatric medicine. If you're interested, I'm happy to talk one-on-one or come back and give a presentation on that as well. But I know we're at the time, but if anybody wants, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer and stick around for any questions.
I had a question.
Sure.
So for students who get accepted to the DO program, do most of them live on campus, or if you're like close by, do some of them stay at home, or what's that like?
So it's really personal preference. We have a variety of students who stay on campus, and then some that